Ben Habib is with us, former MEP and Brexiteer. Ben, how are you doing? How was your Christmas?
Oh, very good, thank you, Peter. Good to see you again. Did you have a good Christmas?
A lovely Christmas, thank you. Very nice, but also a horrendous Christmas for some people who attempted to come across the channel, and very sadly we know that 3 migrants drowned and died. At least 40 others were rescued while trying to board an overcrowded boat on Sunday. Do you sense that the Labour government has any grip on this whatsoever? Will satellites make a difference, Ben?
No, I don't think the Labour government has got a grip on it. All the various actions that the Labour government has said they're going to take actually don't deal with the central problem, which is the prevention of people entering our territorial waters. And it is very sad that 3 people have died, but the default position with government policy is that people will continue to die, because no government policy seeks, as I say, to stop them coming into our territorial waters. Only if the would-be migrants knew that there was no mechanism by which they could get to the UK, and if in the unlikely event they got to the UK, they would be detained and deported and not given a right to reside here, only if that message was very clearly communicated to them would they stop attempting to make that journey. But because we spend loads of money on them, we effectively welcome them with open arms. That's what Border Force does when it picks them up in the middle of the channel. The impression they have, the correct impression they have, is that they will be treated extremely well if they come here. So the more, and so more and more of them make that journey. And that's why we've seen numbers go up, I think, 23% this year compared to last year. And as long as people attempt to make that journey, more people will die in the channel. And from a British perspective, and we mustn't forget the British perspective, because it is the most important perspective. These are mostly young men about whom we know nothing, who've discarded their identities. We don't know their actual ages. We don't know which countries they come from. We don't know what their disposition is, whether they're criminals, whether they hate us, whether they're coming from war-torn zones or whatever. And they come into our country and they get settled in our communities, and they do present a risk to British civil society. The only civilized thing to do in the interest of those seeking to cross the channel and in the British people's interest is to actually stop them in the channel and politely invite them to turn their boats around and go back to France, which is a perfectly safe country.
The Home Office says that £15 million on satellites, they'll be able to track migrants. They've got a global company specialising in space operations. It will provide enhanced surveillance for the Joint Maritime Security Centre. Threats to security, law and order in the marine environment will be tackled. It will detect dark targets which do not emit tracking data, such as ships used by criminals to smuggle goods, tiny dinghies used by channel migrants. Will this make a difference, do you think, necessarily? Because my point is, I mean, we know who's coming across the channel. We know where they're coming from, where they're coming to. We can monitor this in other ways. Is this £15 million satellite move actually going to help in any way? Maybe it'll help get a bit more information, but we know what the information is already, a lot of it anyway.
Well, you're absolutely right, Peter. It's only useful having that information if you're going to use the information to intercept the boats and require them to turn around and go back to France. The Belgians developed, there is precedent for what I'm saying. The Belgians developed a dedicated force to intercept dinghies launching off Belgian shores in the channel and require them to go back. And they use drones, sensors, barricades, fast-moving boats, well-trained militia, effectively, to intercept these boats. And, guess what? Every time that they were intercepted, they peacefully turned their boats around and went back to the Belgian shore. This notion that somehow challenging people as they seek to break into our country illegally might put their lives in danger is completely false. It's the opposite that's true. The more we encourage this trade by not taking positive action against it, the more the trade will continue and the more people will die in the channel. Launches off Belgian shores have reduced by 92% in 5 years by using that interception model. And if this new satellite monitoring system that we're spending 15 million quid on. I think, by the way, that 15 million quid is only for 1 year, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah, you're right.
It's not the full cost. You know, if we're going to spend 15 million quid on this thing, it's only useful having it if we then do something positive with the information, as you suggest. You know, we already know they're coming, and if we're not going to change our approach to that policy of allowing them into the UK, welcoming them into the UK, if we're not going to change that policy, what's the point of wasting yet another 15 million quid? Remember, we've given France the thick end of £1 billion so far to try and stop this trade. We've spent 8 billion a year, roughly, is what we're spending on housing, caring, and feeding, and so on, the illegal migrants who come to this country. The cost to the nation of allowing this trade to continue, leaving aside the human cost, which is vast, the cost to this nation is astronomical when you put it into perspective compared to the winter fuel allowance that was withdrawn, for example, from the elderly the other day, and the IHT imposition on farmers and so on. We've got to stop this trade. We've got to stop being so generous. We've got to take a robust position, and we've got to remember that borders aren't a nice to have, they're a necessary to have in order for us to be safe as a country, and indeed to keep those who seek to enter our country illegally, keep them safe as well.
Ben, just before you go, I just want to ask you about this story about Mauritius demanding £800 million a year and billions in reparations for the controversial Chagos deal. This is Starmer. This just seems to me to be a bit of a mess, actually, facing calls to abandon his surrender of the archipelago after after Mauritius's new government rejected the proposed deal. It started demanding more money. We see this in the context, obviously, of Trump becoming president in less than a month, just a few weeks' time, and not happy about this deal either. This is just in regard to Diego Garcia, which is part of the Chagos Islands, and billions of pounds of reparations being demanded. This just appears to be a bit of a mess, Ben. What do you think?
Oh, I think it's a complete mess, but it's symptomatic of a British government, series of British governments, that doesn't have British interests at heart, that doesn't seem to really care about what matters for the United Kingdom. These islands never belonged to Mauritius. The British Indian Overseas Territory was created, I think, in 1831. These islands, amongst others, were part of the British Indian Overseas Territories, including Mauritius. And Mauritius was given its independence, and we kept the Chagos Islands. And Mauritius's claim to the Chagos comes through some sort of tenuous UN ruling, where there wasn't a unanimous vote, but the UN ruled that we should hand over the Chagos to Mauritius. And the UN, frankly, should keep its nose out of British business. And if we had a political class that actually believed in the United Kingdom, they would have done exactly that. Tell Mauritius to sling their hook. Forget it, they're not getting the islands back. They belong to the United Kingdom, and that's that. You know, and the other thing, of course, Peter, that you and I have discussed so often in the past is Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
I mean, there's actually been more fuss made about the Chagos. I mean, there's been, rightly, a fuss has been made about the Chagos Islands. But we don't hear any fuss being made about the fact that not just a British territory, but part of the United Kingdom has been handed over to the European Union. And I have a Supreme Court ruling that testifies that what I'm saying is correct. And yet our political class is silent. If we're prepared to give up part of the United Kingdom to a foreign power, of course we're going to give up Chagos, and we will give up Gibraltar, and we will give up Falklands.
The problem with Northern Ireland is you know it inside out, Ben. We don't agree on absolutely everything to do with it, but I know you understand it and you take an interest in it. And the fact is that so many mainland UK politicians, including your former colleague Lee Anderson, who didn't seem to know that the DUP were British in a tweet recently. He referred to them as Irish in a tweet in the last couple of days. There is just a sense that Northern Ireland is perhaps in the too difficult box, and we shouldn't even try to understand it. I know if there are Brexit implications and if the Europeans have regulations that then apply to Northern Ireland, well, so be it.
Even if you're an English nationalist, what I would say to you is that for as long as the Northern Ireland Protocol exists, there is a grappling hook from the European Union into the flesh of Great Britain, England, Scotland, and Wales. We as a country, Great Britain, if that's the country in which they're interested, wishes to leave. If they want GB to leave the EU, they've got to get rid of the Northern Ireland Protocol. It is in England's interest to do it, in Wales's interest to do it, and Scotland's interest to do it. But the bigger point, actually, for me, leaving aside appealing to English nationalist instincts. The bigger point for me is, what kind of country are we, Peter, if just because Northern Ireland is a slightly problematical situation, we decide the easy solution is to just give up on it, turn our back on it. 1.8 million people live in Northern Ireland. Over 1 million British citizens live in Northern Ireland. They are our kin. They have stood shoulder to shoulder with people from England, Scotland, and Wales in 2 world wars. And are we just going to turn our backs on them? I find it absolutely outrageous that any English politician would take that view.
No,
any English politician.
Well, thank you, Ben, and I'm delighted that you take the interest and you stand up for the people of Northern Ireland, because we do need people who stand up for the people of Northern Ireland who aren't from Northern Ireland, certainly. And Ben, there's a lot of praise for you. Ben for PM. Ben, please join Reform. Rejoin Reform. We need you very much. Very intelligent man, says William. Lots of people getting in touch and lots of praise for you. So thank you, Ben Habib,
Thank you.
Former MEP and Brexiteer there. Thanks.